Navigating an SAP transformation? We get it. By day, we work hands-on with people like you across the globe. By night, we share what actually works. Welcome to Transformation Every Day with Alexander Greb and Johannes Langguth, where your complex transformation becomes clear, actionable, and achievable.
Welcome everybody. My name is Alexander Greb. I'm Consulting Director at CBS Corporate Business Solutions, and you are listening to Transformation Every Day, expert insights and stories on SAP and beyond. We are closing Season 1 today by diving into a topic that's moving fast and hitting every company sooner than they think, the modern CFO. For this episode, Johannes Langguth and I sat down with Christian Straub, someone I've known for well over a decade and honestly one of my personal go-to people whenever the conversation turns into finance, controlling, and CFO strategy. And we didn't just talk theory, we got into what's actually changing in finance right now, especially with AI moving from interesting tech to something that can reshape processes, decision-making, and how companies manage risk. Christian lays out three big value buckets CFOs are looking at: efficiency, better decisions, and risk mitigation, and why only one of those is easy to put into a classic business case. We also go straight at the uncomfortable truth. If your data and processes are still fragmented, AI won't magically fix that. It will expose it. And as Christian puts it, today's silos are quickly becoming tomorrow's competitive disadvantage. So if you're a CFO, work with finance, or you're trying to connect strategy, data, and operations end to end, this one's for you, here at Transformation Every Day.
Last weeks before Christmas going, what are your plans?
Look, that's a great question. I mean, I'm gonna work hard, right? I think that's what everybody does probably in the industry and at SAP specifically. Also you, Johannes, I hope at least, yeah.
Of course, always fully busy.
Yeah. And Alex in the consulting business as well. So of course on making our customers successful on the last weeks of this year, right? But also of course looking into how we're going to start the next year. Christmas break tends to get shorter and shorter. I have the feeling over the years. Closing the year and then full steam ahead into 2026. But also of course enjoying a bit Christmas markets hopefully. Meeting partners, meeting customers for a little Glühwein maybe also. That's kind of the mix.
How does successful look like? What does making customers successful mean for you?
Probably this is going to be something that we discuss hopefully a bit about. I mean, success means in the end generating business impact, but making sure that all these initiatives that we drive, that they really are successful, right? From a technology point of view, that we get customers live on our systems, but also that we generate great business outcomes that take smart thinking throughout the entire year, also these last weeks. And then, of course, as I said, right, looking at next year, successful will mean to think about all the innovation that we have in front of us, but also part of the complexity that we see. How can we drive it successfully next year? So success has, from that perspective, multiple dimensions, looking at customer success, but also, of course, looking at how we run as an organization or my teams and I myself. Yeah.
Did you recognize something, Alex? He didn't mention AI. So it's good. We have the first 2 minutes we survived.
We will change that. But that's a good point for starting the recording. We have Christian Straub with us, who's an old friend. We know her since quite some times now, 15 years, something like that. You've been in the business for quite a lot of time, and you were always my go-to person in these kinds of finance and controlling and financial strategies and CFO topics. So in a way, topics that are a little bit of voodoo for me because I'm a supply chain guy at heart. But hopefully, or no, not hopefully, but gladly I have with Johannes another finance hardened person with me here in the podcast. So this will be quite an interesting session, definitely. And yes, we did not talk yet about AI. You really also started talking about AI a lot in the recent time. Why is this suddenly a topic for finance too? Just because of the buzz, or is it really actually something which changed the needle?
I mean, that's a very good question. I mean, in the end, I think it's not just a finance topic. I mean, it's a significant business topic, or it shall be a significant business topic. It should be one, we have to say maybe. I always start looking at it, first of all, from what's happening in the market, and think about all the capital that we see invested in technology, in infrastructure. If we see also the speed of the technological advancement, like that's significant. However, if you look at the impact that has been generated on the business side, I personally tend to think that with the current state of capabilities, probably we have max 5% of the value realized that can be realized in businesses. So I think businesses have to realize or free the return on all of this capital that is invested by generating efficiencies, by using AI to better steer, to make smarter decisions. But I think we're at the beginning of that journey. And taking that as a baseline, I think AI has to be this business topic, because AI will impact in the next year and the next years to come all business areas across all functions. And of course, finance is an interesting solution that integrates into the entire value chain, right? Takes care of efficiency in the business, takes care of course, of end-to-end business steering. Therefore, CFOs and the finance function are at the center and the core, of course, of such a business transformation. So therefore, I think huge potential, but also a need for businesses to double down here and make really take benefit of what is there on the tech side to make sure it turns out into or generates true business outcomes.
Of course, it's just a stereotype to accuse a CFO of now starting with AI and or now start with technology and interested in IT. This has been a part for several years already. Do you think now, with what's actually happening, this let's say interest in technology has gotten to another level, or is it something where you say like, no, my discipline, my CFOs, they're always been at the front?
No, absolutely. I think the interest in technology has risen to the next level, but I would say across years, right? You talked about our joint history as consultants, right? When I started back then in the days, and it was the hype time of business analytics, business intelligence. We moved from pure, hey, this is transactional business, into, hey, how can I take a benefit out of, how can I benefit from the data that all these transactions generates? A business analytics was all around data warehousing, was around providing business analytics, dashboarding in the business functions. Then this moved into in memory technology. Then we discussed new cloud ERP systems. Then we discussed the first wave of narrow AI or narrow machine learning. Now we have Gen AI, and across these different steps, I mean, business leaders have, of course, recognized that there's an interesting potential in tech, right, that could help them transform business processes. Partially fair enough, companies such as also SAP have forced them into transformation. And the question is therefore, what does this transformation bring? And the understanding that technology can really make a change has significantly grown in the last year, but also the expectation towards technology. And that's why I think CFOs have become more tech aware, and maybe they have become more techies also in a certain sense. Yeah.
I want to be a little provocative. We record this on a Friday, so it's the close of the end of the week. Do we still need a kind of classic accounting? Is it more like in the era of agentic AI in 2030? We just need maybe the business partners, and you have the whole backbone of classic closing, accounts payable, receivable, general ledger, asset accounting, you name it. All this is non-existent. It's more the business partnering that's helping businesses to steer the function. Is that the vision for finance? What's the vision for finance?
I mean, that's a very good point and question. I think, in the long run, you could, of course, argue that all kinds of transactional processes will vanish. But there are a lot of details on and steps also on that way. If you think about what it means to be in accounting, it's not just entering journals into the system. It is also evaluating. It is also taking decisions by legislation and so on and so forth. So the question I think that we have to answer in the next years, next to having financials driving transactional process steps. To what extent can we hand over also the decision-making points to systems, right? And of course, we'll also see something that AI will more and more drive, right? That AI evaluates legislation, evaluates accounting standards, can derive, the decisions from there. But the process of handing over and decision-making power into AI, I think, has to be a stepwise process. And we're going to see human in the loop in most of the areas for quite some time to come, I would expect. So I think I see this as a stepwise transformation where more processes, specifically transaction-heavy areas, will be handed over to AI. Humans will be in the loop and the roles will change. And the key question, as I said, is where do we hand over decisive decision making to machines, right? And what's the reliability, of course, in there? And this means we really have to look at it as a end-to-end business transformation approach. Data processes, AI, and have to come together to make that happen. And I think, as I said, this is a stepwise journey.
When you have your discussion with CFOs, and you clearly said that it's on the agenda for every CFO. What is kind of the biggest AI value tab that people can look in at the moment within the finance domain? Or you can even go beyond if you like. But I just would love to understand where do CFOs, even though we have a tech audience, I think it's important to understand what the business wants to. What is the business interest, the business value potential that CFOs or other personas see in AI?
So I like to differentiate it three areas. The first one is the obvious one, efficiency, right? And efficiency is, of course, about driving down cost. And if you look at that one, the discussion is very fast going into the direction of everything that's shared services, everything that's operational, accounting and controlling processes, accounts payable, accounts receivable, connecting, of course, into spend processes, connecting into all kind of other contributing processes on the O2C side, for example. So this is where the entire agent discussion goes towards. For example, we have a collection process that looks at unpaid invoices, for example, results disputes, checks, sales, individual goods movements, and reconciling that with disputes that customers have raised. So all these, granular tasks of following up on individual process areas, handing that over to more autonomous, AI models that will orchestrate those processes and move them through a multi-step journey in your business. This is the efficiency pillar, number one. It's an interesting one, of course, and this is related to cost reduction levers. But it's not the only one. If you look at then the second pillar I see is everything around decision making. It's a bit more difficult to quantify that one. I think decision making is all around, as I said, right, taking better decisions, right, by analyzing data in a holistic manner, but also simulating. I think the entire thing around simulation is quite interesting because it's about connecting vast data sets, finding maybe outliers, right? Or looking at, hey, there's an external event coming up. We've seen, or it could be raw material price fluctuations, could be external information around inflation rates, all these things, and then understanding how those drivers impact your value chain through understanding how those costs multiply through your bills of materials and so on into production costs and then move up into the P&L lines. And then understanding that across all kind of different profitability segments and analyzing that. That's a very, very interesting one. I think their AI can be of great help in answering complex business questions, but then also, as I said, simulating events and impact across a huge set of data points. And of course, also then the discussion was at the moment towards more autonomous models like agents in financial planning, agents in financial analysis, and that automatically create analysis, automatically evaluate scenarios, and then come with decision proposals to you that you can then turn around into adjustments in your operational processes. Taking this example of tariffs, right? Tariffs hit you. you have to change the routing of products, for example. You simulate scenario, you understand the impact. You look at your supply chain and capabilities to change, as I said, product routing or maybe the sourcing of product, and then to then translate that into more operational business planning and execution. That's an interesting scenario that you could think about. And that's this second bucket around better decision making. Now that was discussed about this from a simulation point of view, but also it starts, also with data analysis in the sense, I look at it now, I see deviations versus budget versus last year. Now the question is, what is the root cause of the deviation? Is it because I have a price deviation in production? Is it because I have hired more people, so HR costs have risen in which business area? So seeing a symptom and then analyzing down to the root cause is of course the starting point to any simulation of the scenario that I touched on. But again, this is second bucket, and then I see a third bucket, which is everything around risk mitigation, right? And I think that in a world that becomes more and more complex, the question, where do I have a risk exposure in the system? That can be a financial exposure through, foreign currencies and also those kind of things, or problems on the working capital and the cash side. But of course, also, fraud risks or similar, anything that's going into the wrong direction on transactions. Of course, the AI is, of course, very promising in terms of analyzing these cases and driving towards resolution, but also understanding, how accounting standards, frameworks, legislation develops, and then how does it influence, for example, my control system, or would I have to change my also end-to-end in my business, in my products to reduce risk? I think that's another very, very interesting area. And the complexity, I think, in now taking these three buckets, efficiency, decision-making, and risk, is that only the efficiency pillar is easily quantifiable. The other areas have a strong qualitative benefit, and not always easy to be quantified, which is sometimes, I think, a challenge also for business cases, as you calculate them.
For an amateur, if I amateur like me, this looks quite a lot of the role of a CFO definitely is changing, from something of an numbers person to an orchestrator of value. Is this something how you also would underwrite the new job?
Yeah, I mean, this fair enough, this discussion is ongoing since years, I would say, right? This kind of a big discussion around more business partnering, less a transactional perspective, accounting perspective. That's certainly true, right? And each technological step, has been used in the past to say, now the business is changing towards more business partnering. But I think that we're really now at a step change moment where probably this may come true, because again, the speed of change on the tech side is significant now as compared to previous years, and the impact on the capacity of tech also is significant now. Again, if we go back a few years, right, we said, hey, BI back then, would change the way businesses operate, and that was true. But it's just a little incremental step. You could more easily create a dashboard. Maybe if you compare that to, hey, today I move towards taking maybe an entire process or sub-process and hand it over to an autonomous AI model, that's a totally different level. So I think, yes, this role change implication has been there since years, but we have never been closer to actually seeing that getting realized as we are today.
Hi there. Quick break for a short message before we go right back to the episode. Enjoying the insights and stories on transformation every day? Want to make sure you never miss an episode packed with practical tips and best practices from the SAP world, featuring conversations with some of the most interesting people in the SAP universe? Then hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform, whether it is Apple, Spotify, or any other you use. And if our podcast brings you value, we would be incredibly grateful if you could leave us a 5-star review and share it with your friends and colleagues. Your support means the world to us. Thanks so much, and happy listening.
I have one thought when we were discussing this, and back in the company I was working before, I was reporting to the CFO, and there was that annual audit, actually quarterly. They're coming in, right? But there is an audit thing. What is the CFO perspective on AI and audit? Like, do they create with all these autonomous, you call it like autonomous value chain, or having agents run your business, run your numbers? Is that coming also? Do you hear feedback? Does that result in audit concerns, audit risks, or where customers even say, "Hey, I'd rather wait until the technology has been proven successful to pass audits, not proven successful to deliver impact." There's a difference, but it's more the audit aspect. Do you get feedback there? What do the
Yeah, I mean, I think
CFOs think
that's
about that?
definitely a point. Now, I don't want to qualify it or assess this from an auditor point of view because I'm not an auditor, but I definitely hear this discussion. That's why I think it's so important to really think about AI as a topic that has to be connected to data security, to data standards, and also where you have to have explainability in the end in AI. And that's also why human in loop is super important. Of course, businesses have to understand, and this is what I referred to in the very beginning, and why this is also happening. For example, if you think about something that's in the end legally relevant in a financial disclosure, you have to understand why something is happening. You have to be able to substantiate also what is happening in your books. But this is also what I think that, as I said, the change will be stepwise in the sense that not from day one, companies would hand over the most complex, almost critical accounting processes directly over to the machine, but it will be a stepwise process where AI supports decision-making processes, but still probably the human will take the ultimate decision, will stay in the loop, will be able therefore also to substantiate the business decision. And as we progress and companies hopefully build their process, the data standards, and work with reliable partners, they can hand over then also complex decision points to AI. But I think what is always will have to be ensured is traceability, and businesses will have to understand, of course, also when certain decisions have been taken, specifically to the extent it is a legally relevant posting in the books.
I mean, if I look at the different personas that you have across the board, across the company, you will have people like maybe in marketing, maybe in sales that will be kind of going more risk seeking, that like to experiment with AI, maybe define new target group setting, new pricing models, da 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 da. Then you have the CFO, who's rather more risk averse, maybe due to audit reasons, explainability. Then you have, I don't know, a supply chain officer that looks more in kind of a stability. How do you make sure that all those different viewpoints and views from stakeholders are reflected in an AI strategy, so that not like you have scattered AI activities that maybe fail to realize value because they don't add up? What do you see in the market there, Christian?
I like your point, right? I mean, of adding up, as you just said at the very end of your sentence. I think it's if I come back again to what I said initially, that I think just 5% max of the value that can be addressed is realized today. I think if we look in the next years, it has to be about cumulative advantages that we generate, and if our vision is that we have more and more connected processes where, as I said, we can simulate scenarios along the value chain, but also we can automate processes across multiple functions, right? If you think about a process where, as I said, for example, a customer dispute comes in, you assess it, and then you resolve it by checking the material flow, by checking the accounting flow, by understanding what the customer service interaction was, for example. You have to connect different areas in the organization. You just refer to supply chain, finance, HR, and so forth. So So if you now try to scan an approach towards, doing something here, there, and there, but you don't have a consistent strategy behind, okay, what is my North Star, where do I want to move towards, then later you won't be able to connect the dots. You won't be able to drive the process towards more autonomy, right? You won't be able to take better end-to-end decision, and that means you don't have a cumulative advantage. So back to your words, the advantages or the value doesn't add up. That means you will maybe incrementally generate value, but not substantially. And that is, I think, the risk. So how do I align those different stakeholders? I think here probably also IT comes into the game, right? And IT and business and the entire corporate leadership, of course, by defining a North Star perspective, one, then deriving a strategy from there, right? How should AI be handled? And then, orchestrating that down into a data strategy, a process strategy, and a business architectural change approach towards that. And I think this is super, super important. So the cumulative advantage will be key critical, I think, across the next years. And the question, can businesses really realize it?
I mean, the AI discussion reminds me a bit of the process discussion we had a couple of years back when, process management solution were popping up, and there was always the question, should there be like a central team owning and maintaining process management? I think was one of the early approaches to have a central team where you have like owners per process that ultimately, drive the company design forward. These days, I feel it has moved towards a distributed model where you have global process owners in different organizations that maybe roll up indirectly to a process office. Do you see organizational evolution that is associated to AI? Say you have, I don't know, an AI owner in the company that is responsible for driving those initiatives and maintaining the coherence, or do companies directly jump on a distributed model? What are you seeing?
I personally think it's my personal view, it's a combination of both, right? I think that specifically on the process side, process ownership is super, super important, because I think that you have to prepare your processes to become AI ready. You have to own your data sets to allow you to take better decisions. So owning the individual master data elements to the domains, and making sure the creation of master data is consistent. You have clear standards globally. So cleaning that up, process side, the clean core idea on the data side, the idea of having clean master data, semantically clear also, is extremely important. And I think you only achieve that if you have clear ownership. And that probably means you have to have a global process owner there. That's one side. On the other hand, when it comes to how you drive innovation on the AI side, and I sense this also at SAP, for example, in the SAP business function, as far as I understand, it has to be a decentralized model, because those, you cannot centrally govern all the intelligence of, how do I use that technology now to make business impact. So in the last years, we have, for example, decentralized processes into shared service locations. So now the shared service locations are those business areas that understand the processes, maybe aligned to a global process owner, but since they run the processes and they understand the innovation, how they apply AI now in those processes, that happens decentrally, right? So they come up with ideas based, as I said, hopefully on an integrated strategy and framework, and then they play that up maybe to the global work, right? So I think the way we innovate has to be decentralized, but I think that still global ownership is super, super important, because only then will you be able to, find the right process governance and establish stability, so that you're AI ready as a business. Does it resonate to you, or do you have a different perspective, Johannes? Feel free to challenge it.
It's a good. I think there is no right or wrong, right? It depends on how an organization is set up from a mentality perspective. I know a lot of organizations that are very top-down driven, where you have a lot of value if there is top-down ownership for a topic. On the other hand, I saw, I have one customer, and it's actually a pretty cool example. So they were struggling with AI use case identification. They were wondering, okay, what are the right cases for me? They all somehow add value, but like, how do I also identify AI cases that are just proprietary to me as a business? And they were running contests. So we're having kind of contests for the teams. They could apply different business teams, like all across the globe. They could say what is their idea for an AI solution for an agent that could help streamline process. And they were actually paying high prices for those cases that help the company the most, which is a very interesting approach. I've never thought about it, to have kind of a governed, democratized use case identification. That's how I would probably call it. And that's a cool thing because then you don't identify those, don't get me wrong, 50-cent problems.
Yeah.
I think Josh Greenbaum, right, Alex, called them the $1 million problems. That's how you identify the $1 million problems that ultimately provide quite some value to the company as a whole. And you could even say it was not an IT person evaluating, it was not a, I don't know, whatever guy and with high up the management chain coming up with it. It was something that the people on the ground, daily exposed to the processes, identified, evaluated, and selected as relevant to be AI covered. And I like that approach. I
Yeah.
keep proposing this to my customers when I
But then
engage
we
with
have
them.
concepts, right? I mean, this is what we said, right? That you have to decentralize. You have to allow your teams to identify these big levers. And the end, by the way, on the use case side, I mean, there's there's two areas, right? I think there's these incremental, no-brainer use cases, right? Let's say in finance could be a journal upload function. This, hey, you do this, and then incrementally the value adds up, right? And you build a case through that, and it helps the organization understand initially how you use things. Or one step back, most of the companies you talk to nowadays have started these kind of chatbot initiatives for arbitrary business areas, and this helps, of course, the organization understand what's happening, and then use it also in a democratized manner across multiple processes. And then you have these individual big levers that everybody's searching for, as I call it, and the big tickets, right? And multi-million cases, but they require collective intelligence and smart identification, right? And this is where decentralization is super, super important. Yeah.
Do you have something of a favorite use case that you seen in the last, let's say, 12 months coming up, happening, delivering value, where you say like, okay, this is something which can be seen as a, let's say, as a North Star of how this kind of best practice development should end up?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think I've seen multiple things happening. Also, by the way, in SAP's partner ecosystem, sometimes it's very, very easy things like, hey, verifying tax codes and transactions. Something where you have a lot of transactions, you have a risk exposure. It's a great thing. Or companies have started in the early days with putting all their accounting manuals into a kind of tool or something, right? And then having the system guide you and how you create transactions. These were easy, but high impact cases. And now what I think is most promising or super, super interesting, of course, is now, but this is yet to come in terms of the big levers. It's currently in a lot of, projects. You see that in beta or in processing is like all these, as I said, agentic cases. There currently things are happening, as I mentioned before, the order to cash side, for example. They're promising cases because there you have typically on a lot of cases high transactional volume. Resolving customer disputes, for example, or also on the financial closing side, creating approvals, for example, automatically, purchase order approvals, for example. But I know you can go on, in other areas like sourcing agent, RFP processes, where you can automate things. So that's, I think, super, super interesting now, all these things that are coming in that area. And companies are at the first steps in realizing that. So I think the coolest cases initially were those that, hey, easily done and, it creates really a business return. And the most promising ones, of course, are related to more fraud automation to agents, for example.
Since one of the big trends is AI augmented decision making, do you think that the kind of time for dashboards is already over? Yeah, because AI is taking more of that intelligent stuff with them, and as such, dashboards may lose their significance. Or do you think these are basically two things that are made to coexist in a certain way?
Yeah. I mean, I have built a lot of dashboards in my consulting career, and I think dashboards are super important. So in the end, I mean, visual representation of data is super important to make you understand. Dashboards are a way of communicating also, right? And helping you, as I said, get context into your data storyline. Of course, the way you see what a promise is out there is that the interaction with data will be more natural language driven. You ask a question to a system, and then the system comes back with that. Hey, what is the revenue on a certain location? System comes back. Now, everybody who has still BI and BW systems and data warehouses and cubes in the past knows, of course, that it's actually not that easy because you have a lot of questions when you select the data point, which data version, right? Which period is it? Maybe it's a calculated KPI that I'm asking for. So that's the complexity, I think, in retrieving data. And also it means you have to understand, also tabular data structures and semantics behind it, an area, by the way, that also SAP really looks heavily after. So there's a complexity in this natural language interaction with data, but that's very promising what's coming there. And I see it as a complementary element towards to dashboards, so that you look at the dashboard, you say, hey, give me additional information on XYZ, the customer breakdown of my day sales outstanding, then this result is generated and put into your dashboard, so that you have a visual representation still, but you can more naturally interact with the data. This is where I see things going, and I think therefore that this will be a coexistence. I think there's a huge benefit if we achieve to integrate more data structures and then have a broader set of information points that we can expose towards AI. This will certainly help us to make different types of decisions in an automated manner or system supported manner. So there, I think integrating structured, unstructured data and building clear semantics around that is a super interesting game.
Christian, I think, I love what you describe. I love that we interact with the system on a natural language basis. I love that we have possibly like assistants supporting us all across.
Huge but is
comes the yes. I love it. I love it. I mean that's a cool vision, right? Like, let's be honest, it's a cool thing. Full stop. It's a cool thing. I am just wondering, how do we get the users there? Right. I mean, what we're now having is an educated management discussion. Oh yeah, that's something. That's the vision. That's where we need to be. That's the future. And then I go to a lot of companies, and I still see people working with a trackpad. How do we bridge that? What do we need to do to get people into that working mode? Because I think that's a huge change for a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree, right? And it reminds me of a recent also customer engagement where we talked about a big cloud AP transformation, and then the question, was posed to a consultant, hey, what will be the immediate benefits, when I switch on the system? And then the guy, and he's a super experienced guy, right, multiple years of service, and said, you will find your data again. And that is actually a huge benefit in a change, that you have consistency, right, in the way, of course, you work, right? And this goes back to what you said, Johannes. I mean, users, not everybody loves change, and the tendency of human being is not to embrace change. So we have to ensure consistency in a certain sense, right? That we take users with us, that, hey, we don't crash the entire system on day one, but we have them see.
But on day two.
On day two, maybe. So you understand, first of all, that you have a transition path from how you work today into how you work in the future. And that's why I think the change has to be stepwise. And as a matter of fact, is stepwise, because if you go into projects, now we talk on the tech side about a lot of capabilities, including agents and so on, everything we now discuss. But as I said, if you go into the reality, the reality that company design is totally different. So the change will be stepwise, where we say, hey, look, you have to start cleaning up your processes, right? As we just said. And then it's very basic things, right? Hey, your cost center structure is totally blown up. Reduce it, clean it up, right? You chart an account, you have to go and clean it up, right? You have to think about your ledger strategy. You think about probably also your system strategy. How can you integrate, right? So it starts there, and then you go towards embedded analytics, all these things that we have promised maybe before. That's first steps to take. Maybe you switch on an AI tool capability that helps you understand, what you have to do at certain transactions, gives you a hint, a contextual hint, or helps you analyze certain data points, and then you go further, right? So I think it has to be a stepwise process, and you have to take users with you. And I think a lot of companies do really understand that now, and also have change programs around that. But also, of course, there's also all kinds of software capabilities that you can use to guide users in processes. And I think this is super, super important. Yeah.
Definitely. But do you see, since we are talking now about augmentation, about bringing users together and so on, do you think that now the time actually has come that these kind of silos that we always have talked about in the past, where supply chain management prepares stuff and has to be, basically deliver data to finance and to controlling, where sales has to deliver their numbers to finance and controlling, that this is finally over? That now we are able, with things happening in the business data cloud and so on, these kind of one truth, the single source of truth that we always have talked about already in the last years, but in my opinion, quite often had problems really 100% to realize and to materialize, that this is becoming true now finally.
Yeah, so I think today's silos will definitely be the competitive disadvantage of tomorrow. So that's absolutely clear for me. Now, is it over? That's a good question. I think this takes a lot of work, to convince and to prove it. Yeah. But I personally think, again, if you have silos today, tomorrow these are going to be competitive disadvantage. You will not be able to leverage the capabilities that you promise, and we see it in little reality checks today, starting initiatives using, as we just discussed, natural language processing against data, right? And they recognize that they can't really use they get something back, but they can't really use it for decision making because it's just incorrect, right? The statements that come out, or they don't find the connection between the different areas, as you just said, for connected decision making. So that's why the time is now to overcome that, to think about, how do you integrate processes wall to wall? I think the cost of interfaces, therefore, not just to operate them technically, but also looking at the cost that it generates to fix then subsequent problems in using AI then across those interfaces. That goes up, and therefore I see a movement from these siloed investments towards more horizontal perspective across the chain of value generation in a business again. And that has to drive, of course, also all kind of change initiatives, right, in the organizations. And now we all know that change across functions is difficult. And this is also, of course, why a lot of companies in the first step will try to throw AI into different areas and hope that in the end you have a accumulated benefit, as we discussed. But I think that this will be proven wrong in a lot of cases, and that's why here it's the task of those who understand the end-to-end processes to guide towards a next gen process model, I would say, that is ready for AI, and that comes together. You mentioned business data cloud, also with the next gen data strategy, where you understand data points, not just the SAP or whatever kind of ERP system data, but also the ecosystem data integrated, and then you use it along with an integrated process.
I had recently a conversation during an event with the CFO of a customer of mine, and since all these topics, we also discussed were coming up, we ended at the level where these discussions almost always go, which is data quality, and the responsibility for data governance, for example, has always been highly fragmented in most of the cases. Because everybody was just feeling responsible for his own stuff. Like order data in the order offices and supply chain and so on, and sales data in the selling section of the company. This CFO started in his organization to request the ownership of data quality for himself, because he said, since I'm basically responsible for the financial cash flow outcome of this company, and the blood that is flowing through these kinds of analysis and measurements and so on is our data, I take the responsibility for that, which means that I take the whole governance topic in my own hands, and I lead and guide the company in this realm. And the interesting thing is, when we discussed about what he already has achieved and so on, I think I never had such a jump in quality of data and so on happening in organizations, like in that example when the finance guy, who really was heavily interested in results, took over this kinds of responsibility. Do you think this is a model that could work for or should work for any company, or do you think like this maybe, especially in larger companies, be a little bit difficult to achieve?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the understanding that data is at the core of a successful AI strategy is I think, really correct, and it's really also more understood by all kind of business leaders. I always think about this one CIO that presented their from a manufacturing business, large size, presented their AI strategy, and he said, look, our AI strategy started with a data strategy. So they set up a new data strategy, and from there they developed AI cases, right? So they started with data, and then they went into AI cases. So I think that's super helpful. And now when it comes to C-level ownership, probably whether it's the CFO or the CEO, whoever it is, I think that's super helpful. If you have this top level commitment towards that data governance. Now, the only point is that, it doesn't stop there, but, data quality starts with the person that enters a data record. The person that generates, a new master data entry. And the way the systems connect. So at all levels of the organization, you have to implement it, then you have to orchestrate it. But centralizing data ownership and establishing a clear top-level governance around it is super, super important. And is absolutely the key for success.
When you have now this kind of CFOs coming to you and saying, like, okay, I understood the many elements and building blocks of these kinds of strategies and what it means to reach the next step, of course. Talking about the CFO playbook, how would you consult, or what would you tell somebody who is interested in, we want to make the next step because the time is ripe, to create measurable impact? What would be something like a 2-step, 3-step path that you would advise companies to do?
I think the first thing is really, I think I would start with the bigger picture. I would say, look, what is the strategy? Where do we want to go towards? If we think a few years down the road, there has to be an understanding that a big part of processes will be either AI driven or AI supported, right? And a big part of the decisions you take will be either AI driven or AI augmented, right? And then, as we said, from there, cascading it down into your overall execution strategy, that's important. So that's an exercise I would definitely recommend. And then, of course, from there, you can think about, or you should think about, two streams, I think. On the one hand side, you want to be fast, of course, in identifying these incremental use cases. I mean, you have to be fast. You cannot talk about strategies for years. You have to be fast in finding incremental steps you can take that will show a return, immediately also for the business. So think about these incremental use cases. I mean, at SAP, you talk about these AI cases or tool, it helps you along all kinds of processes. So look into that. And then second, as we discussed before, think about what are the high impact cases. And that takes bottom-up screening of your processes, right, through technical measures, but also discussing how these leverage and think about, how you engage differentiating technology there. That's stream one, and the second stream is then all around process and data transformation, as we said. So thinking about what does that now mean for processes? Therefore, whilst you discuss these cases, think about how you roll them out incrementally or high impact. You think about the process model. You think about all these things that are happening now. Also, cloud ERP transformation, for example, get your processes back to a standard so you can really then more and more embed these cases and then also scale out those cases. And then think about your data strategy. And across those two lanes, you have then the organizational change management that you will have to run. And you have to have people in your organization that understand that and then are able to drive that on all of the different areas, be it on the business side or on the IT side. So really having, starting from this end-to-end perspective, having then these two streams, one, driving a case-based discussion, and second, driving a process and data discussion, linking in the end both together against this strategy that is important and supported by an end-to-end change management. This is what I would recommend. And of course, as you do so, you have to think about the people that you have in your organization. Do you have to bring in new people? I think even SAP's own CFO at some point said, probably if you hire a treasurer in the future, maybe you hire a data and AI guy, and he or she can learn treasury later. Maybe this is the way things will change also on the business side. That you have to have people, of course, in the org that understand tech, understand AI, and then bring it into the context of the organization, of the business process, of the business problem. So you have to look into education, into developing people, and therefore developing the organization. Yeah.
Looks like still a lot of things to do in the future. Since you are more or less our Christmas episode, Christian, probably people, when this comes out, are not really able to see you or to talk to you anymore, at least this year, but it would have to be 2026. Do people have to wait till Sapphire to talk with you, or what's your plans for events in January and February of 2027?
So I think that the multiple events that will be coming up, just connect with me, and I will be happy to share. Either engaging directly, or of course also, yes, there will be multiple events, innovation days that we plan for, but also external events that will be present, big ones, smaller ones. I think, there's a lot of speed at the moment in what we do and in the market. So there will be a lot of occasions, and I hope also that I meet both of you. Maybe.
Hopefully.
Absolutely.
Christmas, otherwise afterwards for a nice little New Year's party.
Yeah, but how can people connect to you?
Through LinkedIn, for sure, right? Otherwise, you guys, if there's a high interest, you guys can also share my email address, maybe.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
No worries.
We'll do that.
Super.
Cool. Thank you very much, Christian.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Was a fantastic conversation. I always learn a lot in these kinds of things. I'm really, really happy to have you. And I wish you very, very Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I'm looking forward to see you and to talk to you in 2026.
Super. Thanks to you. And same to you, Alex. Thanks, Johannes.
See you.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.